around here.
Someone out there is taking all these urban legends and making them reality.
Urban legend.
Have you heard the one about the microwave?
Welcome back to the 10th annual Halloween special. I hope you guys are having fun this October talking about all kinds of horror movies with me. Today's video is about Urban Legend, a 1998 film about a serial killer on a college campus, killing students in ways that resemble classic urban legend folklore. In my review for I Still Know What You Did Last Summer, I talked about how that film was part of a horror movie marathon that was on TV late one night in my early teens, and it was one of the very first slashers I ever saw. And I mentioned there was another film that was also in that marathon, and Urban Legend is that movie. Just like I Still Know What You Did Last Summer, Urban Legend is not considered a classic of the subgenre slasher. But because of that late night movie marathon, it was one of the first that I ever saw, and it became a gateway movie for other slasher films that are much better. And so for that reason, I'm always going to appreciate Urban Legend. It also has some really good ideas and a great cast. The film opens with a pretty effective sequence that features someone in the back seat of a woman's car, a classic urban legend in itself. She also stops at a gas station, and the price is $1.14 a gallon. I think at this point, gas prices like that are an urban legend. This scene also features Brad Dourif as a gas station attendant who tries to warn her that there's someone in the back seat of her car. This film stars Jared Leto as a student who's working for the college paper because he wants to be a journalist one day. Since he's such a method actor, do you think he interviewed cast and crew in between takes? I bet you he did. Joshua Jackson is also in the film, reminding us that every guy in the late 90s wanted to have platinum blonde hair. The casting of Robert Englund as a professor that tells all the students about urban legends and folklore is a great exposition tool. He stands up there in front of his students with a handy slideshow presentation and teaches everybody everything they need to know about urban legends. I heard a lot of these when I was a kid and into my teenage years. I remember when my parents were teaching me how to drive, they told me to never respond to another driver flashing their high beams at me. The biggest one that I heard in elementary school, and it fucking terrified me, was that there was a woman who licked an envelope and she cut her tongue. And on that envelope, there were insect eggs that were microscopic, and they got inside of her tongue. And those eggs hatched in her tongue, bugs just inside of her tongue. Like, I remember hearing that and almost crying because I was like, I don't know, 5 or 6 years old. Just about every slasher that came after Scream for about 5 years was considered a ripoff by most critics. Even I Know What You Did Last Summer, which was written by Kevin Williamson before Scream. It's just that Scream got made first, and later he was able to make I Know What You Did Last Summer because of Scream's success. Urban Legend as well is often accused of being a ripoff of Scream. But I do think the idea of urban legends being used to kill off a bunch of college students is definitely a viable one, and I don't think it's like Scream at all. It's just that it came right after Scream, and clearly the success of Scream was like, oh shit, we gotta make more slashers. It doesn't mean it's a ripoff of Scream, though, and I don't really consider it to be. I mean, honestly, the only thing that's similar is some people are called on a phone occasionally, and there is a killer on campus. Scream is not the first movie to ever do that. I mean, at all. Like, there's a billion movies like that in the 80s. But this is something I've noticed with film criticism over the past decade, and that is that people tend to think mostly back about 5 years when it comes to comparing a new release to something that happened recently. And they don't think about the fact that even that movie that you're referencing is inspired by countless others. This movie has so many 90s things it hurts. We've already talked about the platinum blonde hair, but our lead character, Natalie, played by Alicia Witt, has a roommate who often visits the website Goth for Goth. And when Natalie tries to use the phone when her roommate's on the internet, she can't because the dial-up took over. Oh my god, I don't miss those days. Like, I will talk forever about how much I love movies shot on film and how I wish more movies were shot on film. The sound of vinyl is really great and sometimes better than perfect digital clarity, but I don't give a shit about dial-up internet. That thing can go fuck itself. Jared Leto's pager goes off in the middle of the movie as well. Maybe that was his agent calling him about the Morbius script. Yeah, I saw Morbius. Speaking of Jared Leto, his character's name is Paul. Like, I'm a big fan of American Psycho, so you know what I'm thinking immediately.
Hey, Paul!
Something else that's very 90s about this movie is that Natalie is actually able to look at the checkout record for a book at the library. I really miss that as a device in movies for building mystery and intrigue around a character. I mean, look at Seven, for instance. The only reason Mills and Somerset even find John Doe's apartment is because of his library card. There are so many great plot devices you can't do anymore nowadays. Like, for instance, everyone on this campus legitimately does not know if a massacre once occurred at their school. A lot of people seem to think that it did happen, but nobody knows for sure. It's like that would never happen today. You can instantly find out anything that happened at a location, especially a school. I showed this movie to my buddy last night. He had never seen it, and he remarked about halfway through that he was pretty impressed by how the film is able to make just about everyone suspicious in just the right ways. Everyone seems to have a potential motive or a reason for doing it, and there's just enough misdirection from red herrings to make the experience really fun. There's also a handful of really good kills in the movie. I like the Dean's, for instance, a lot. His ankles are slashed by someone hiding underneath his car, also an urban legend. Then he's run over and pushed into a bunch of tire spikes. I also like the sequence where the DJ, played by Tara Reid, is chased around and she still has her headset on, and so her murder is broadcast to the entire campus and people just think she's playing a prank. I don't know how much sense that makes in regards to the strength of her radio signals since she's going pretty far away from the broadcast studio, but I think it's a cool idea. I also love Loretta Devine in this movie. She plays the campus security guard who's obsessed with Pam Grier. She wants to be just like her, and when she sees the opportunity, she takes it. She's also in the sequel, Urban Legend's Final Cut. And surprisingly, Scott Derrickson of Black Phone and Sinister fame was one of the co-writers on that sequel. I enjoy Urban Legend on a guilty pleasure level throughout most of the movie, but where things start to fall apart for me are the third act. The eventual reveal of who's doing it. If you haven't seen it, I'm going to talk about that, so spoiler warning. The fact that it's Natalie's best friend, played by Rebecca Gayheart, and there's this history with a crime Natalie committed back in the day involving reckless endangerment, which caused the death of a man, and that man just so happened to be her friend's fiance. I understand why you'd be pissed, but why would you target other students who were not involved with that death? The one time the movie gives us a hint as to why is when she says, I wanted to kill all of your friends as well, and now I'm going to kill you. I just don't buy that. I don't think that's strong enough. Like, I'm going to take all your friends away and then you. Because she wasn't really super close with any of the students except for her friend who's now going to kill her. So that doesn't quite work for me as a motivation behind the killer. I also find it hilarious that she has a slideshow presentation. She actually says, gratefully, I have a visual aid, and starts showing slides. Also in this sequence, Natalie is stabbed, and then later on, she's driving with Jared Leto, and there seems to be no discussion of this stab wound at all. And so aspects of this third act don't really work for me. But I will always enjoy Urban Legend, and I do find myself wanting to watch it every few years. A lot of it is definitely wrapped up in nostalgia, just like I Know What You Did Last Summer and its sequel, but I do find this movie strangely effective, and it gave me a few really good ideas for other movies while I was watching it, that my friend and I actually paused the movie and had like a 45-minute discussion about a potential movie. So like sometimes you have to watch films like Urban Legend, a perfectly watchable movie that does have a good idea that maybe could have been a little better, and suddenly you start thinking about ways that it could have been. And if you're a filmmaker, a writer, director, whatever, that can be the spark sometimes that leads to something great. Guys, thank you so much for continuing to watch the 10th annual Halloween special. Look forward to more videos very soon, and if you like this, you can click right here and get Stuckmanized.